Well, hi everyone. Welcome back to another episode number 41 of the RTI Speed Tips with Bob and Chad. Tonight we've got a special guest, Mr. Pat Fagan from Fast Shafts. How's your week been, Pat? Glad to have you on tonight.
It's been absolutely crazy. I mean, we've been going 150 mile an hour. Seems like since March of 2020, and with the COVID stuff and everything going on, and the lack of components out there in the world. We got lucky enough that we ordered most of our parts for 2021. We ordered most everything for the whole year in October 2020, and the good thing is we got a new machine in the building. We're going to have 4 drive shaft balancers up and ready to go here pretty quickly. So, the good thing about that is that not only do we not have our our warehouses that we're supplying, but I've got the ability to move things around whenever I need to. If I get somebody that calls me on a Thursday and they really, really, really need a drive shaft on Friday, I can make it happen. So. And I think that's one of the things that keeps us ahead of the curve is the fact that most of the time we've already got inventory on the shelf ready to go, but right now we can't build stuff fast enough. I mean, the industry has gone crazy. We continue to grow. We continue to pick up new customers every single day somewhere in the United States, and it's a good thing and a bad thing. I like to service my customers in a good fashion, but boy, sometimes it's tough. And but like I said, we're able to move things around with having 4 machines in the building, and we've got enough components to last a few more months. I think we'll be good. I've got promise from different suppliers that we're going to be good for the rest of the year. So. Yeah, it's a good thing, Bob, and I'm sure Chad's experiencing the same thing, and it's just business really gone way over the top this year.
So how's everything up in Wisconsin, Bangor, Wisconsin, Chad?
It's like a sauna today, man. It's heat wave.
Today was hot down here, man. It was hot.
Yeah,
it ended up being 93 degrees, I think, is what the high was today.
Not any fun. Yeah, we're busy. We're thrashing just like Pat, fighting for components and that kind of stuff, and we're getting ready to go on the Dakota tour next week. Austin's going to go on the tour, and Austin Tanner, and then my son Mason's actually going to join him for the tour. So get him out there and get him working. So we're excited about that.
So what's Mason think of that, getting to go on that tour?
He's pumped. He don't remember his last trip up there, which was I think like 6 or 7 years ago. I took the boys and
right, I remember that.
Went on an excursion. That was a lot of work, but a lot of fun. So they're a little more able to now. So he's getting into it. So we're excited to have him be a part of it and get out there and help our team win races. So
awesome. Well, I know my buddy in Boone, Jake McBurney's planning on going up there for that tour. We're not able to go. We're just so busy right now. And earlier in our conversations, when Pat was mentioning his lovely excursions with his motorhome, I tell you what, I think a snowmobile and a motorhome have the same things in common. You use them for a little bit, and then you have to fix this and fix that and fix this and fix that. And we went up on that Minnesota tour, had a great time. I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was really cool. We got to see a lot of people that watch the show, people coming up to me all the time talking about the show and stuff like that. So that was exciting. Got to see quite a few people up in that area that was at the school that we had in Hibbing a couple of years ago. And so it's pretty cool. We had a lot of fun. We still had to fight with the generator a little bit. And but otherwise, it was just a totally great time. And it was hot, but it was still a lot of fun. So I can empathize with you a little bit there, Pat, on that motorhome thing, because I took it over to the dealer and had him get everything all ready because I didn't have time to get it done myself. And evidently he didn't do what he was supposed to do on the generator, or whether there's a generator problem. I have no idea. We've fought that generator a little bit, but that's all beside the point. Us too, we've been busier than ever. In fact, we got a new employee starting. Well, we hired a new employee for the shock room to work with Bobby a week ago. Yeah, it was a week ago. And we got another new guy that's going to start on tomorrow, actually, to work with Rocky. He's a gentleman that's got some experience, and you all know who he is. That's Mr. Jonathan Logue. And so he's going to come to work for us. And we got 3 repairs sitting here waiting for him to come in and take over and put some magic on them and get those boys so they're back racing again. With all the new stuff, we've had a little difficulty keeping up with the new stuff and the repairs. So, all right, our first question of the night. What's your valve frame ride height measurement front bolts do you recommend when the Hammond motor plate setup? To be honest with you, Philip, I'm not that familiar with the Hammond motor plate setup. I know, say, our IMCA type tire, which is like generally an 83-inch type tire, we run on our cars. We run 7 5/8 on the left front and 7 1/2 on the right front. If you're running a taller tire like that Soda tire or the UMP tire, you have to add about 1/4 of an inch to both of those because of the taller tire. Just want to make a plug for the 4-link RTI school. Really helped us up our game this year. BHE builds my shocks. I buy all my Wehrs products and fast shaft drive shafts. All 3 great guys. Well, I appreciate that, Aaron. That's a good way to start the show, man.
Awesome.
Yes, it is.
It kind of actually puts you a little bit of an arch in your back, and you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Todd, how's everything been going with you? What's your opinion of being allowed to groove the IMCA Hoosiers? Well, you know, I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, I don't know what options they really had due to the tire shortage. They had to do something to try to get a little bit more life out of that tire. Whether it's getting, if it gets another night out of the tire, it's worth it. I mean, I don't know what the price of tires are, but I've heard anywhere from 120 to 150 bucks now. So anything you can do. But grooving them, basically, I don't say I would do a lot of extra grooving. I would just open up the lines on the tire. And the biggest advantage that I can see, that very outside edge, opening that outside edge up kind of makes that tire actually seem a little bit wider. And I felt that definitely helped some side bite things. We played a lot with that stuff up north last week, and I felt that really helped the tire. I've seen all kinds of different grooving patterns. The way the racetracks were, there wasn't a tremendous amount of passing, so it's hard for me to say this is exactly the way to groove it, but it just makes sense. Those 2 that go all the way around the tire, opening them up to get a little bit more side by that tire, I think it's a pretty good idea. Philip, what are your thoughts on setting caster camber at full hike or attitude? Well, the problem with setting all that stuff, you get into a complicated situation where, unless you know the true amount of gain, because see, the car's not always going to be at full hike. I mean, there's points and times, depending on how the car enters the corner, how the car gets back on the left rear or gets up on the left rear, that might change it. So I still go strictly off of my static measurements. And I look like, especially with camber, I look at a lot of pictures, and I had a customer the other day that was having a little bit of trouble getting through the corner, and I was at Boone Speedway and up on the catwalk, and I was easily ready to see it. He was actually over on the anyway, he was over on the right front, and it was kind of rolling the sidewall over. So I told him he needed to increase the camber a little bit, and it actually improved the handling of his car because the sidewall is not going to give you any side bite. Plus, when it rolls over on the sidewall, you're taking traction out of the car. It's just not working the way it's supposed to do. So that's kind of what I recommend, static numbers, but I really pay a lot of attention to pictures. Ryan's got one for you, Pat. He says, Pat Fagan, has that jerk David Baldwin gave you any grief here lately?
Hey, Dave Baldwin, he's definitely a handful for an old guy, but well, he's got it going on. He works real hard and races real hard, and he struggles sometimes to get to the top, but he always stays right in there. And yeah, whenever he calls me, I know that I'm going to get at least 5 minutes of ear chewing from him, from one fashion or another. But Dave Baldwin's a really, really good guy. He races in the UMP world, races around Kevin Gundacker's racetrack down there, and he's a good guy. He's a hard worker, and he loves racing. Yeah, he's a handful, definitely.
Stefan, a metric hobby stock. If you go from a 15-inch left rear spring and a 12-inch right rear spring and put a 1-inch taller spring in the rear with the same hang on, we're going to shut a fan off here. Our blower just turned on. But anyway, 1-inch taller spring in the rear with the same rating on both sides, what effect will that have on the car? Its biggest thing is it'll probably give you a little bit more side bite. The taller spring is going to make that car, it's going to have a little bit higher spring table. The back of the car is going to be up a little bit more. It's looking to try to get more bar angle out of the stock four-link. Well, I think it's a good idea. I mean, as long as you don't have any body rules that where you're going to be, too high in the back of the car or whatever, I think it's a great idea. I would definitely recommend it. Hi, Chad. I've heard you say that you will run longer right side four-link bars on the right. You would like to run longer right side bars. I assume that would be both rods, but can you elaborate on that and what effect it would have?
So the longer rods generally make the car tighter. The longer arm, when it's going through its roll steer change from the center of the corner off, just slows that transition through the middle of the corner and slows down the suspension cage. So it kind of makes the car a little bit lazier, so you can probably add spring rate and drive the tire into the racetrack, but it's just to calm that right rear and slow everything down just a little bit to give you some more right rear feel.
Ryan, hammer down heat. The front end felt a little bouncy on entry, maybe into the middle of the corner. More compression, less rebound. What are the thoughts on a Midwest Modified? If it's a little bit on the bouncy side getting into the corner, I'd probably go both. A little bit more compression and a little bit more rebound so that you just get more wheel control. That would be my recommendation, because a lot of times what the bounce actually comes from is not enough rebound, to be honest with you, because the coil spring, when the coil spring, you have to kind of remember those povo sticks that we used to have as a kid. In fact, my granddaughter, she can go a whole block around her house on a povo stick. But the thing of it is that spring, when it's trying to release, it needs more control, and that's what actually causes the bounce a lot of times. So I'd highly recommend a little more compression, but I'd probably go more rebound, a couple of valve numbers more. Jared, what's a good starting point for dynamic roll steer on a 4-link rear suspension? Well, what I always recommend as far as the dynamic, and of course, when I'm talking dynamic, I'm talking the left rear. I always like to see that upper rod when you jack up underneath the seat to the point where the tire is almost off the ground. I let it back down a little bit so the tire still has some compression to it, and still like to see that bar in that 45 to 48 degrees. I know some guys have went more than that. I get a little nervous when you start getting past that 50-degree range, because then all of a sudden it's going to start to be kind of that povo sticker thing. You're going to kind of get more of a solid point rather than working the car to try to go forward. Aaron, I've been noticing more modifieds in my area, leaning more to the left lately. When I set my ride heights and scale my car and then install my shocks, leans a little to the right. Is there something to be gained by running a softer right front spring and then lowering the left side and raising the right side? No, not at all. What's happening is these guys that looks like the cars are leaning more to the left, they're running that real soft left rear spring, 50 pounds, 75 pounds, 80 pounds, 100 pound spring. So when the car gets up on the bars, their dynamic is still set to probably where yours is more than likely. It's just they can actually run their body rules a little bit higher to go through tech. And when the car is out on the racetrack, their left rear quarter panel is up in the air more. And that's caused by running that softer left rear spring. Right rear spring on my GRT Sport Mod, should it be straight up and down at ride height? As per IMCA rules, that is correct, Mike. It definitely needs to be straight up and down. On a stock car, how much preload on the right rear spring is ideal on the right rear? Currently, I only have 250 pounds with a scale weight of 700 and that on that tire. That seems too low to me. I don't know if that's really too low. I would have to say that 250 to 300 pound range is going to be pretty good with the 700 pound, because you got to remember the amount of load on that spring in relationship to where your scale's measuring from the center of the tire. If you measure in from the center of the tire into your coil spring, more than likely I'm guessing, but I bet it's going to be 12 inches. And when you go with that ratio, I don't think you're all that far out of the ball game there, because if you start getting too stiff that far inboard, I'm afraid the car is going to be more sensitive in that situation. So I don't think you're out of the ball game. I think you're pretty close. Steven, what would cause a right front to shudder and cause a push on a smooth, slick racetrack? Too much load. We have a 500 pound spring in it, and it's a Sport Mod. Well, that's a great question. You guys got any ideas?
Could be a camber problem. Could be a number of things.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, there's so many things that it could be. It could very well possibly be a brake situation, because more than likely, if you're getting into the corner, and you're putting more front brake into the car to kind of keep the tail underneath you, it's very possible that that could be causing it too. 500 pound spring, that's pretty normal nowadays for a Sport Mod.
Air pressure.
And the camber is definitely, if you have a little too much camber or not enough camber, if the car's riding on the outside, if the car's running on the sidewall, that could definitely do it too. So, maybe it needs a little more camber. once again, back to like I talked about a little while ago, pictures, man. Having people look at that car on the outside of the racetrack, from the outside, watching where that tire is so key, or your camera guy can be a huge help. I'm on a 100-pound left rear spring now, so maybe my rear ride height is too high. Well, it's possible, Aaron. That's, I mean, I would still tend to want to run my left side heights higher if possible than my right side, so that this, the centers of everything, it's going to roll. If the left side's lower than the right side, it's going to make it harder to roll to the right. If the left side's up higher, it's kind of like, if this table was tilted and it would roll easier with it being tilted. So in my opinion, I still think that's the case. But some of those guys are even, like I said, there's guys out there running 50-pound springs. And they're really lazy on the left rear. So one thing about which we forgot about, or didn't mention it, but the 30th annual Harris Clash, 29 days, and our good buddy Pat from Fast Shafts is upping his sponsorship, and we're putting in an extra $1,000 to the Sport Mod purse. It's going to raise the win from $1,200 to $1,500 to win, and then we split it pretty much down even. It's going to make it $100 to start. So, boy, I really appreciate that, Pat. Talk about the other part of the sponsorship that you do. Tell everybody what that is.
Well, if I remember right, I think, isn't it, if you start 10th and you work your way up to win, right? A bunch of money there too. I think it was $100 position or something like that, Bob, or is it 50?
I think it's $50 a position, because it ended up being like, if you started 10th and win that thing, you'd win an extra $500 compliments of Fast Shaft racing products, drive shafts, driveline equipment. And then you also have a hard charge, or a fast time. That's right. Fast time in the Sport Mod and fast time in the modified. Whoever has the fastest time of the night gets $250.
Yeah.
So greatly appreciate it. Pat's been a longtime sponsor of the Harris Clash for years. I don't actually remember how many years, but I would say it's been at least 20. First came on board with the sponsoring the trophies, and then has continually added to it over the years, and of course appreciates all you guys' support. And it's nice to see people like Pat and Chad here that take care of you guys and helping on something like this to give back. So it's all kind of what we started the Harris Clash all was about originally, was to give back to the racer and make a race that was a special race for everybody. And so I was pretty excited when Pat offered to put in an extra $100 or extra $1,000 in the Sport Mod purse. That's going to make that, like I said, it's going to make that a lot better for those guys, and so we're excited about that.
Yeah, we've got a lot of good customers in the IMCA world, and I've always said that I truly believe that my involvement with IMCA has really, really helped my business, kept me involved, and we keep trying to give back a little bit more time, But this Harris Clash, what is it? The longest single night running event in the history of IMCA?
Yeah, it's the longest single day event we're next to the longest, which of course is the Super Nationals, which has been the longest, but it's the longest single day event in IMCA's history. 30 years hard for me to believe that I was 37 years old when I first started this deal. Holy cow, where the years have went. Well, I can actually show you where the years went, but
It's been a real good event, and it's really cool that you've carried on the Harris name, and you've sponsored and put on this event every year, and you keep making it better and better and better. And the racetrack that you're having it at now, I don't think there's, I mean, there's a lot of good racetracks. Don't get me wrong, but the Queensland family at Deer Creek Speedway. I mean, that's a really, really cool venue to have it at. I think it's centrally located where you can draw people in the IMCA world from just about everywhere, and it's really a really neat event.
yeah. And of course, Chad is going to be our Race of Champions sponsor again, and that's another exciting event because, of course, you have to have been a champion of the event to be able to be in this. And it's $1,000 to the winner and $100 to start. This year, it looks like we're going to have 13 guys. We've got 2 guys that moved up from the IMCA Sport Mod ranks that were past Sport Mod champions. And of course, if you're a past Sport Mod champion and move up to the modified division, you're still a champion, so you're in that show, and it's just a cool event. I mean, it's 12 laps for $1,000. Yeah, I can't thank Chad enough, and I really appreciate your involvement with that deal, and it's just a fun deal. I mean, being able to honor those guys that have won that event, that's all what that's about for me. It's just so cool. Okay, IMCA stock car, stop and go racetrack, quarter mile. I struggle trying to run the bottom. If I pick up the throttle, too quickly, it tends to lose the nose. Any suggestions? Well, to be honest with you, Jacob, my first response would be more stagger. When you're running a tight stop and go racetrack, you really got to run the car free, and you guys can adjust your wheelbase a little bit. We run our cars pretty free, a little bit more stagger to roll, the old coffee cup theory, rolling the styrofoam cup around, it just does a circle on its own. More stagger will help the car turn on its own, and then you might have to favor your wheelbase a little bit, put a little bit of lead in it to help you get back up off the corner. But that definitely that would be my first go-to, is a little bit more stagger. You could probably run a little more trailing arm angle in the right rear. The downside to the more trailing arm angle, of course, if it gets pretty slick coming off, that right rear is going to keep traction in it, and it's going to want to try to tail out on you. So more trailing arm angle if the racetrack is a little bit sticky, or more stagger would be my 2 choices. Philip, what are your static height, camber, and caster on a Chevelle clip? Well, right front, I always run 6.5 degrees. If I've got clearance on the shock absorber where I can go a little bit more, 6.5 to 7 degrees of camber, negative camber. Caster wise, kind of depends on what spindles you're running. With the Pinto spindles, I run 4. With the 3-piece spindles, I run 5 to 6. Left front, 4 degrees camber and 2 degrees caster with the Pinto spindles, and with 3-piece I run 3. Pat, how many RPMs a lightweight drive shaft worth versus a stock 50-inch drive shaft?
No, that's an ancient Chinese secret, I think, but I know that the average 2.5-inch steel drive shaft weighs about 18 pounds, and I know that our lightweight chromoly drive shaft, it'll come in about 14, 15 pounds. So I gotta think that anytime you can, free up weight, rotating weight that's in line with a crankshaft. I mean, that's like back in the days when people would take the flywheels off and, take that big old heavy manual transmission flywheel off and, and put an automatic flywheel. I mean, the amount of quickness you gained in the RPMs is huge. And I really don't have a good answer for that, but I just think that, it's just pretty much common sense. I mean, there's a reason they sell lightweight crankshafts, to make the engine accelerate quicker. And like I said, anytime you can free up weight that's in direct line with that crankshaft, it's got to be a huge advantage. So, and we've had really, really good luck with that, our 2-inch lightweight chromoly drive shaft. I mean, Mark Elliott and I started working on that thing, probably almost 20 years ago, and it's been a good piece ever since. So I think if you have the option and you want to spend a little more money, I think I would definitely go with the 2-inch lightweight chromoly drive shaft.
Philip, frame heights and rake measurements on a Chevelle clip car. Well, the frame heights I told you a little while ago was the 7 5/8 on the left front from the center of the bolt to the hard surface, and on the right side would be a 7.5 from the center of the lower control arm, the front lower control arm bolt to the floor. Rake on the norm, we used to run about 1 inch a rake. Now, with some of this new stuff with that real lightweight left rear spring in a static measurement, it might only be a 1/2 inch of rake, but you definitely want to have some rake from front to rear. Like I said, normally we used to run 1 inch. Brad, hi guys, I watched the 100-pound spring video in the Knowledge Center and had a question. We run an IMCA A-mod and are playing with the 100-pound spring. I noticed in your video you scaled with a normal type. Well,
He carries on down below there.
okay, gotcha. Springs then went to 100 pounds. You said in the video you wanted to compress the spring 1 inch. Is that a standard why to put the spring in? We just been scaling it like with our 200. Well, in all honesty, scaling it, you can scale it 2 different ways. It just kind of depends on what you want to do. I still scale a lot of times the old-fashioned way. I scale it with a 175-pound spring or whatever the case is, so I get all my other ride heights and everything else set where I want it to be. Then I put that 100-pound spring in there, put 2 inches of load in that 100-pound spring, and my ride heights, wherever they are, is where they're going to be statically. Because now, once I've done that, after I've switched to that 100-pound spring, I no longer really care about my static measurements. All I'm concerned about now is where this is all going to go, because once the car's up on the spring with that 100-pound spring, say for example, you scale it with your 200-pound spring and you've got 60 pounds of bite. You'll put that 100-pound spring in there and you'll probably have 130 or 140 pounds of bite. So you're panicking going, oh my God, what did I do? Well, you got to remember with that 100-pound spring, as it rebounds, it's actually only has 100 pounds per inch of load. So it's going to, when it gets up on the bars, the car's not going to know that you had 160 pounds or that you had 60 pounds of bite. All it's going to know is that you got up to the angles quicker with that 100-pound spring, so that you're driving off the 4-link bars and the car is actually driving off of it in a dynamic situation. If you try to scale it with that 100-pound spring, sometimes I think it just takes a lot longer, and I like the older way of doing it. Like I said, just I've got one set we set up that we put in the car, scale it just like we normally would. That way we can set all of our other stuff statically. So that's what our book says. So we're doing it that way. Then once again, after that fact, I no longer really care because I'm more concerned about the dynamics. What's your opinion on that, Chad?
You hit the nail on the head, I would say.
Bob, as you do catch and release when fishing, which type do you like to eat if you keep them? Well, first of all, the only real fish I like to eat is cod and tilapia, and I don't catch any of that stuff. So I'm not a big fish eater.
Wait. Didn't you have some of my fish fry at
Oh
home?
yeah, right. I forgot about
Come
that.
on, man.
Yeah, Chad fixed us up this great tasty. What was it again?
It was bluegill and crappie.
Bluegill, yeah, bluegill and crappie. Yeah, I forgot about that. But that's a Chad fishing story, not a Bob fishing story. But anyway, that's beside the point. I enjoyed the fish that Chad cooked at the Super Nationals last year was fantastic. But when I'm fishing, I do catch and release. Short story. Well, my son-in-law and I went out Thursday night and I caught a 3-pound walleye, first walleye I've ever caught in my life. That was pretty exciting. So yeah, it's been pretty good. When we were up on the Minnesota tour, Bobby and I hired a guide to take us out for a half a day, and we caught all kinds of different species of fish. It was really pretty cool. Philip, what is too much static camber and caster on a Chevelle clip? Obviously, I have looked at the pictures and need more. Well, like I said earlier, static wise, 7 degrees of camber is going to be the same. Caster is still going to be the same as we just discussed a little bit ago. So none of that's really changed. The new GRTA mods seem to have a lot more rear steer than the older cars. How are they able to get all that rear steer? Complete different attitude than the older cars in the area. Blake, I really think it has a lot to do with the fact that we're really dealing more with the, not that it's not necessarily the age of the car, but the new cars get over on the right front more. Their front ends are designed a little bit differently. So there's quite a bit of difference in the front end design. So it does get on the right front more, which in turn gets the car up on the left rear more, which creates more rear steer. I think the location of some of the bars are a little bit different, but not really that much different that would create anything there. I'd have to say it's more, to be honest with you, it's more the new style front ends. I mean, like our new sport mod style front end, we had 5 or 6 guys with the new 2020 cars or the 2021 cars won last weekend with our new BHE 3-piece spindle design. GRT's got their new 3-piece spindle design. It works very well. I think it's the front end that's actually helping those cars more than it's in the back of the car. And of course, the difference in the springs and, some of the older cars, maybe you're still running the stiffer left rear rather than the softer left rear.
Hey, Bob, one of the things we might throw into that is as the cars get up on the bars more and the rear end's moving forward a lot more, a lot of guys are, knocking the rear seals out of the transmissions because they got so much travel in the rear end. And, the way that we've combated that is we're offering a little bit longer slip yoke now. Instead of the average, 6 inches of seal surface, it's got a slip yoke of 7 inches of seal. When you're setting it right height, you have to have 4 inches of yoke hanging out, and you'll still have 3 inches inside the. So what you got to do is you got to shorten the drive shaft to allow, for all that to happen. So, that might be something as we're going forward, people need to start paying attention to, because we got this new slip yard.
Well, and that's a very good point, because that's something that with this amount of new left rear movement and stuff, I mean, things are going, and the thing of it is and if you bottom that transmission out, yeah, you could take the seal out. You could also break a bunch of stuff too.
Yeah.
I have seen that happen before too. So we've got a cool video that I use for the school of a car that we just put it on to get some suspension footage, and it was kind of ironic because that particular customer had been complaining that he can't keep rear seals in that thing. And of course, in this video, you can see where the drive shaft comes in, bottoms out, and you can see why it would be doing just exactly what you're talking about. Alex, metric hobby stock, what is your thoughts on using brakes or trail braking to keep the car from being loose while entering the turn? We can use dual master cylinders and adjust front to rear. Oh, by far, Alec. If they allow you to use a dual master setup where you can adjust it front to rear, that's huge. Doesn't matter if you're racing a mini sprint or if you're racing a pavement car. I mean, that being able to adjust front brake or rear brake into the car is just an ultimate tuning device that the driver can have. And then the drivers, the really good drivers, really have that feel for keeping it, and we've actually got a good video on the Knowledge Center where I'm showing working that throttle and brake together to keep the car loaded. And what it does is it keeps the suspension loaded so it's nothing unloads when you get into the corner. David, my question is about pull bar chassis mount placement. Is there an advantage to pull from the behind of the chassis center of gravity? And if so, why? Well, that's a good question. I'm not completely sure do you understand the question, Chad?
Well, it'd probably be a really short pull bar. You're behind the center of gravity, so it'd be a short pull bar. So you'd have a lot of instant traction, but you wouldn't have any longevity traction, I think.
Sure.
I think like the center of gravity of the car, the farther you move that back, i.e. the more of the car you're going to pick up when you pull, the more traction it's going to have. But being the arm is so short, it's going to lose that faster because it changes the ratio so quick. So I think more instant traction, you're going to get killed down the straightaway, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would think, in my opinion, I agree with Chad 100%, and I'm glad you interpreted that question that way. I wasn't thinking correctly there. But the longer bar, like I said, I still like that in that neighborhood of 28 to 30 inches. When we had the 24-inch bars, the cars had really good traction, instant traction. But once the car got 100 feet off the corner or whatever, it seemed like it started to lose that traction. And when we went to the longer bar, what actually happened was it smoothed out the traction in the middle of the corner. So instead of having so much instant traction, the car was more drivable because it was a little slower to respond. So, Philip, thank you. I was following from, and I didn't have enough pictures on the racetrack. I've been struggling. Well, I'll tell you what, like I said, if you can get pictures or if you can have video cameras or whatever, somebody watching from the outside of that thing, it's a big help, no doubt about that.
Usually the photographers are looking for new angles. So if you find a track photographer and say, hey, man, here's a $20 bill. I want a shot of my car in the middle of the corner from the outside when you're in backsteer to check that camber.
They're going to be all over that.
We're going to be all over that with some cool-ass lens that's going to get right in there. And, them guys really like that stuff. So I think if you reached out to the photographer, they'd get you the footage you need for that.
Yep, I agree with that. Those guys are really good at that because, like you said, they're always looking for new cool angles, so no doubt about it. Love the guy content. Thank you for everything and everything you do. Even if Marvin Burton always tells me I'm wrong after listening to you guys. Well, everybody's entitled to their opinion, and I respect Marv's. Gerald, Chad, is it necessary to have a Torrington bearing on both ends of a spring slider or just one end?
I would say that one is fine. We've had people run them on both. The problem is the lower one's going to get really dirty. When you wash the car, you're going to retain a little bit of water in there. Unless you blow it out of there and get it completely dry, you're going to have issues with that bottom bearing. So really, we just want to put one bearing on one end, so when that thing's traveling and the spring is twisting, you're releasing that energy and letting it relax and not cause the spring bow is really the advantage we're looking for there. So one is really all that is necessary there.
Jeff, what ball joint pins do you run with the 3-piece spindles and a 7 5/8 and 7.5 inch ride height? To be honest with you, I don't actually remember off the top of my head the measurements or the part number. I know the right front one is really short, and the left front is a 1/4 of an inch longer, if I remember right. But I know the right front one's a pretty short ball joint. Jeremy, if you are on the left rear clamped style setup with an eliminator and spring in front of the rear end and the shock behind, does the spring still need to have some preload? Yeah, definitely, because even though you're clamped up, I still think you're going to want to have some preload on it, because you're still you have to start from that static position. You might not need as much preload because you're always working it into the spring, but I would still start with some preload in it, you bet. Pat, I recently had to use a drive shaft 1/4 of an inch longer and push a bunch of grease oil out through the breather. I went back to the original drive shaft and it did the same. Never did previously. Any thoughts on what might happen?
So what's he doing? He's pushing.
He said he recently had to use a drive shaft that was a 1/4 of an inch longer. And when he did that, it pushed a bunch of gear oil out through the breather. Then he went back to his original drive shaft and it still pushed gear oil out the same. Never did that before. Yeah. So he's kind of wanting to know what's going on.
Not really sure that's a I'm not really sure that's a drive shaft issue. It sounds like possibly, a lot of times when people are having trouble pushing gear oil out, it's the placement of the vent. Either that or they're, a lot of times people are running the inner seals in the axle housing tubes, and they're putting too much fluid in there. So, you might look at your vent placement. Maybe try to raise the vent up a little bit higher. Put a filter on it. A lot of people have used fuel filters on the end of that rubber hose for the vent on the rear end, and they just put it up a little bit higher. And and like I said, the other thing is you might you might check. You might be putting in too much fluid. I've always been a firm believer of leave the inner seal out. Because I don't like running seals anyway, but a lot of people like to run them. But I say leave the left one out. That way, when the car straightens out and you're going down the straightaway, that fluid has a chance to run down the left side of the axle tube. And I consider that left axle tube is kind of like a radiator. It helps keep things cooler, and just a better deal. You can run a little bit more fluid, and gives more breathing room for it. So it's either the inner axle seals are causing a problem or your vent. I really don't think it's a drive shaft issue, because I don't think drive shaft is going to have anything with the heat inside the rear end.
Unless he's talking transmission. I don't know if he's talking transmission or rear end.
Yeah. And then again, what type of transmission? Is it a Power Glide or Saginaw? Just.
Yeah, Eric, it sounds to me like there's a coincidence going on there somehow.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it is. Because technically, that quarter of an inch longer drive shaft shouldn't have anything to do with pushing gear oil out.
Breather hose.
Yeah, I would have to say something to that effect. Jeff, in what situation would you raise the right upper bar on the cage? I'll let you take that one, Chad.
Well, if you're talking just raising just the back of it on the cage, that's gonna tighten the car up because you're gonna take drive angle away. It's gonna slow the cage down. Probably gonna have to add spring rate to get into the corner. A more popular thing would be to just raise the bar on the front and the back, raising both the top and lowering the bottom. So it kind of depends on the situation, but taking angle out of the right rear bar is going to tighten it center off.
Yeah. Okay. Transmission is a Saginaw.
Probably breather right on it. If you got the breather screwed right on the tranny, you probably need to buy a 128B from Wehrs Machine off the transmission with a little hose, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing, the Saginaw transmissions, a lot of the times these Saginaw transmissions, the average slip yoke's only going to go in about 3.5 inches, because of the line stops. A lot of guys nowadays have taken the time to take the transmission apart and put that output shaft in a lathe and undercut the shaft so you can put a longer slip yoke in there. So there's a lot of different options that, if you run an 8-inch slip yoke, Saginaw transmission, it's not going to work because it's only going to go in about 3.5, maybe 4 inches, and it's going to stop. So it's just, like Chad said, you probably need to adjust your breather hose and buy one of them breathers from Chad. So.
John, I recently bought a 2010 Harris that I'm building into a sport mod. I do my wheelbase measurements, but it puts my left rear very close to my bar mounts. How can I fix this for more wheel clearance? Well, first the thing is your 2010 Harris car, that's a 209.5-inch wheelbase car. So if you're trying to make it a 208-inch wheelbase car, the car was never built or never designed for that short of wheelbase. So that's part of your problem, and I'm assuming that's more than likely what it is, because that should have plenty of clearance in there. The way that car was actually built was for the longer wheelbase car. I wouldn't worry about running a longer wheelbase car, especially with a sport mod. I think you'd like the car good. The 2009 and 2010 Harris cars were an excellent race car. Those cars were built very well, and everything worked really good on them, and they were a well-designed car. And I think they would be very competitive in a sport mod world today. Thank you guys for what you do. It makes a huge difference for our race team. Having no-name chassis, we love our BHE products and, of course, our Wehrs products. Thank you, Brad. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Brian, when running a low bite setup, is low cross just an effect that we should live with, or by moving lead, changing springs, or achieving the ideal cross while still keeping the bite low? No, when you start running a lower bite in your car, you're going to lose your cross percentage because that's relative. You're still going to want to keep your left side percentage the same, as a rule of thumb, somewhere around 54%. Your rear percentage needs to probably be in the 56 range. But if you start running less bite, your cross percentage is definitely going to go down. And that's just mathematics. Well, we've had a pretty good night here. We've got some really good questions, and anything new at Wehrs Machine? I forgot to ask about that earlier tonight.
We've been too busy to work on the new stuff. We got a bunch of stuff on the board, but we're going to try and get that all done here before catalog season, which is going to be difficult. But there's always stuff on the board to build new. We just haven't had a lot of time to do it. We've been extremely short-staffed, I think, like the rest of the world. We're trying to hire machinists and machine operators, and it's been a unfortunate time in America where employment is a battle. So we're trying to do the best we can with what we got, and new products are on the horizon. Just be later this summer.
Something that I've seen change a lot here in the last, I'm going to say 8 to 12 months is, with the introduction of the Burn and the Burt transmissions in the stock car world, there's a lot of guys that are shortening up their drive shafts and they're using a longer slip yoke in them. I don't quite understand how they're making the rear ends move forward like the modified world does, but it's happening, and I think it's coming. It's going to be pretty popular here.
Yeah, you can see this. The stock car technology is definitely starting to pick up a lot with the same fad as the sport mod, and the modified car itself too. So those guys are they're getting their programs working really good. And if you notice, like when they come through the pits, their left trailing arm and the rear end's almost dragging the ground. And so they've got a lot of angle in that left lower trailing arm. So that's where their movement's coming from. It definitely, it's definitely interesting watching those guys up there on the Minnesota tour, that stock car deal. Man, it was a race to watch. I mean, they did an awesome job, and they're not hesitant to share a little paint and move stuff if need be, and they get right after that racing thing. They take it pretty seriously. There's no doubt about it. With the sport mods and the modifieds, you don't. With that open wheel racing, it's a little bit riskier. They still try to rub paint, but it's still a little riskier. Dave, what's the advantage or disadvantage to a softer left rear and right rear spring in a stock car? Well, with the stock car, definitely, and even with a modified or a sport mod, if you go real soft on that left rear, you almost have to go stiffer on the right rear to compensate for the car. Still needs X amount of spring. Add the weight of all four springs, it still needs X amount of spring to function. The advantage of the softer spring, once again, you can put a lot of preload in it. So when the car goes to accelerate, it jumps up and puts the angle in that left rear, gets the steer in it, helps it rotate through the middle of the corner a little better. But I've definitely seen the trend. If you go with that softer left rear spring, I definitely see the trend is going to stiffer right rears. Some guys up on the tour were running some real stiff right rear stuff, but in that 250, 275 range is not out of the ordinary. So you got you're sending Austin up on the Dakota tour, Chad, representing Wehrs machine with the parts truck. So yep. He'll be up there with the trailer. You got any events you're going to, Pat?
It's just about impossible to go anywhere. I mean, the Harris Clash is probably going to be one of my first outings for the year. I mean, I did a little Webster City deal one night, but it's just so hard. I mean, we can't build product fast enough to put stuff in my trailer, because if I do that, then I'm not going to be taking care of the customers. It's just I just can't find a balancing point of me being gone and putting product in the trailer. It's just crazy. I don't know how Chad's going to fill up that great big trailer that he just bought, but God bless you.
No, we're working hard. We're going to be a little short on a few things, but definitely it's been a balancing act. We're in that trailer. We should park the trailer right by the shipping lanes the way we're in it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Trying to keep things rolling out the door, but every day is a new adventure is what I used to say. Now I'm shortening it up to like every 12 minutes is a new adventure here, because you never know what you're going to run out of, and you're going to be in a situation, and we're battling material, we're battling components, we're battling people. It's been awesome. I'm not complaining at all, because I would rather be busy than standing around, but we are, like you say, we're tremendously blessed to be in an industry that supports us, and we're doing the best we can with what we got, I guess, is what we're all trying to say, right? We're trying to keep it going out the door and keep our customers, winning races is what our goal is. So,
That's
but
right.
we feel we need to be there on the tour to support them, and if you want to send us some drive shafts to have, or you got a dealer out there, I'm assuming that's going to be stocked up.
Yeah.
But it's been a balancing act for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Okay, it's 8 o'clock. Appreciate you guys coming on tonight. It's been an excellent show, and thank you all for being part of our show again. Episode number 41. We'll see everybody, and let's see, today's the 5th, so 14 days from now will be the 19th. So we'll see everybody July 19th will be our next show.
See everybody at the Harris Clash too.
Yep, and then the next show after that will probably be the show at the Harris Clash. So that'll be interesting. And so looking forward to it. Can't wait for the Harris Clash. For those of you, don't forget, if you're not anywhere where you can come and watch it in person, it will be on IMCA TV. So you can still watch it. It's definitely a show to watch. Those guys, I tell you what, Deer Creek and the Queenland family and the racetrack in Spring Valley, Minnesota is so awesome. It's so nice to go where you really wanted to be there to race. And so it's a lot of fun. You feel like everybody feels very important on being there. And so it's pretty cool. I really enjoy it. They do a heck of a job with the facility. And so mark that on your calendar, 29 days, August 3rd. All right. Thanks, everybody. And have a nice night.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Ed.
See you later.
Yep.